Fantastic. Well, it's a real treat for me to be launching into this session and introducing two folks who I think honestly don't need any introduction in many regards. First, we have Michael Crow, the president of Arizona State University, and Walter Parkes, the chairman and co-founder of Dreamscape. Given that we're at the largest EdTech learning summit in the world, President Crow has a bit of a home court advantage, so to speak. So I'll be brief in my intro and simply say that as the president of what has been recognized as the most innovative university in the US for 6 years and counting, but arguably longer than that and globally, and a multi-decade long track record of looking for ways to have technology enable and enhance learning opportunities at scale, it'll be particularly interesting to hear about how AR and VR now factor into his thinking. Meanwhile, Walter Parkes, he holds an equally esteemed position in the world of entertainment and has clearly the same strong conviction that with new technologies come new opportunities. As a screenwriter, he helped to bring personal computing and the internet into the public consciousness with war games and sneakers. As a producer or executive producer, he's been responsible for over 40 movies, including the Men in Black series, Gladiator, Catch Me If You Can, Awakenings, Minority Report, many more. And as a studio executive, he was the founding co-head of DreamWorks Motion Pictures, which under his supervision garnered for only the second time in Academy history 3 consecutive Best Picture Oscars with American Beauty, Gladiator, and A Beautiful Mind. So to kick off the session, and before we really get into the details of what is Dreamscape Learn all about, I want to set the stage by asking the question often posed to any proverbial new couple. Tell us, how'd you two meet? Right, and maybe Michael, I'll kick it off to you to start, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thanks, Ellen, and it's really great to have an opportunity to be here and talk about a lot of progress that's being made. ASU is, as some of you know, roughly 20 years into a process of building a new kind of public university, a university which is deeply committed to egalitarian access and has a world-class faculty capable of competing with anyone, and then bringing all of that together and then finding a way to scale that out. We've made a lot of progress, particularly in the last 10 years, through massive engagement with technology partners, with creative thinkers, with people that are out there that can help us to take the teaching, learning, and discovery environment that we've built and find a way to project that out to high school students, to college students, to people that are adults working from home, people working in their jobs and in their businesses throughout their entire life. We call the universal learner. And some of you at this meeting will recall the last 3 years or so, I've put up sort of a request for genius. And in the request for genius, I've outlined 3 or 4 areas of technology essential to us being able to find a way to overcome this gap with technology-centered learning. And that is the lack of emotionality, the lack of the embodiment of the human spirit. And it was in that search where Walter and I ran into each other and then began to realize that his genius, his team, his integration of technology related to full virtual reality, avatar-driven, full immersive engagement that had been developed for the entertainment industry in ways that go beyond anything that most of you have ever experienced. I had a chance to experience this environment that had been created and could see instantly that we had, for the first time in the history of all the things that we've been doing in 20 years, a way in which we could actually find a way to reach out to any learner anywhere and connect to their inner emotionality, their inner selves, by making them a part of the learning process. What we have to talk about today is really fantastic, but it's really this convergence of creative genius, the storytellers that movie makers really are masters of, the technology that Walter has brought together, the learning pedagogy that we've brought together, and the compression of all of this into what I think is really and literally the first time that we've been able to find a way to create a learning environment that we can express at scale, where we can get not just fantastic learning outcomes, but better learning outcomes than we've ever been able to see before. In fact, the second that I was able to experience the immersive environments that Walter and his team had put together, I could see instantly that there is a way to overcome, for instance, among other things, the math and science and technology and engineering gap that seems to occur within our society gone. We have a way to overcome that. We have a way to make things happen. And so, Ellen, that's when Walter and I got together, we could see that there was this disconnection that can now be connected. So it was a fantastic opportunity.
Walter, I'm guessing, you have a lot of people coming through your Dreamscape venues and you get lots of positive reactions. I don't know that you modeled out the idea that one of your customers would, after the fact, come up and say, hey, there's this education opportunity. How did it hit you? Get us to the same point that Michael just got us to.
Well, yes and no. Listen, it's quite true that all of us in Hollywood, we had great, opportunity to make pictures. We're first of all, that business and that mode of communicating is being supplanted by new ones. But to be able to bring what we do beyond just the realm of entertainment, but into something like education, this was always a goal of ours. And in fact, Dreamscape itself came from a sort of a quasi-academic background. I'll be very honest, because I've been in the movie business for my entire life. And I tried VR in the past. And I must admit that I was not a convert. I had some issues with VR, mainly two. One was that in all the VR I had done, I was alone. And I really believe that whether it's as a student or a consumer of entertainment, we are social creatures. And I didn't care for the loneliness of the VR environment. And also, I was not embodied. I didn't have agency as a human being. I'm right here, even in the Zoom. Well, I can see my hands. I know I have a body. And it makes it more real for me, whereas most VR, that's not the case. So it wasn't until I think it was 2016 that I had the opportunity to go to Geneva, Switzerland, and try the underlying technology on which Dreamscape is built. It was created by medical technologists, genius group of researchers and technologists called Artenim, that originally had created this for medical use. And I saw something that overcame those two issues and immediately saw a panoply of potential for it. So it's very hard to describe VR. It's also hard to depict it in 2D, but I think the best we can do is maybe put up a little sizzle reel for the entertainment side of this that will give the audience some sense of what we're talking about.
Below us, there's a pod of whales that needs our help.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave.
The coolest VR experience ever.
That was incredible. That was incredible.
It was one of the coolest experiences ever.
It was freaking amazing.
I went to an alien zoo. Unbelievable.
So I've had the benefit of seeing our customers walk out and having a sort of a reaction I had really never seen even in movies. And I think that the moment was Michael and me, after doing some of these experiences together, looking at each other and sort of posing the question, could we ever bring that level of emotional sort of audience engagement to education, to higher education? And really that is the basis on which Dreamscape Learn was created.
I mean, I think that. Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
I was going to say, I can just imagine, I'm waiting for the day that kids walking out of physical class or a joint, online class go, I've never seen anything like that. If I could take your voiceover and stick it in a classroom scenario. But Michael, you were going to say?
Well, so, the hard thing that we've had in terms of our experience in advancing, very advanced adaptive learning platforms that we have and all kinds of tools that we have for helping students to learn and so forth was that they were devoid of emotion and devoid of agency. And so it turns out that human beings learn by their emotional connection. That's why classrooms are so powerful. That's why the immersive experience being on campus is so powerful. Well, you can't always do that, and you certainly can't always do that in ways that make meaningful differences. And so I think that where we've started here is this launch of a biology curriculum. How do you learn a really complicated core scientific subject that could help you as a human being across the entirety of your life, regardless of whether or not you become a scientist or not? And we're making huge progress. I mean, we could see instantly that we can make these kinds of things happen. And so
I hear you mention a biology course. What I'm hoping maybe we'll do, that's a good launching point. Over the course of the next half hour, I want to make sure we make it clear, what have you created in this entity called Dreamscape Learn? How are you going to go about it? How will it change the way we think of educational opportunities? But maybe we can start with just that. So it sounds like you took biology as a first stepping stone to prove out what your vision is. Is that
Right. So we had already been working heavily on biology by building an entire college curriculum and adaptive learning platform called the BioSpine. But even that was insufficient. And so once we were able to hook up with Walter and the Dreamscape Immersive people, we've been able to take it even further. In fact, I think we've got some presentation to walk through here to give you some sense of where we are.
Okay, I'm going to grab the screen and let's see if this works. And it should be a black screen. Yeah. I was one of those kids for whom I'm sure there's many students in the world that can sort of understand and incorporate biological concepts into their educational life. I wasn't one of them, and I think that what we were looking at here was there another way? So,
well, and in fact, Walter, just to add, only about a third of the students that learn science in traditional ways actually master it in a way where it becomes an integrated part of their intellectual identity. It's too hard to teach without emotional connection.
And, that's interesting. Just an aside, even before we go further, I have found something without any exception, which is the people who do our experiences, the level of involvement and immersion in VR, you remember it in a different way. You don't remember it as something you saw or something you read. You remember it as an experience you had. And if we can bring that sort of learning outcome to curriculum, we will really do an extraordinary thing.
So this is what we think of as the missing link. This is the missing thing that's missing from being able to figure out how to do this.
So what you were looking at here is the Alien Zoo. Just anecdotally, this is a concept that my former mentor and partner and collaborator and very good friend, Steven Spielberg, and I tried to actually do as a motion picture at DreamWorks when we were there. We could never come up with a good story. And it was Steven who first said, why don't you try that one in VR? And we did. This is the basis of what was the very first Dreamscape experience, and it posits the existence of a 5-mile-wide orbiting animal sanctuary for the endangered species of the galaxy. And it looks something like an animal park or a zoo. It has 7 different environments. And this was really the experience that Michael looked at, and I could just see the wheels turning, that could this be a basis for a new way of teaching biology, where the student is no longer a recipient of others' research, but actually is involved in scaled collaborative research with others, using this digital world, the Alien Zoo, as if you will, a VR laboratory to explore, to take samples, to solve problems, and in so doing, over the course of the semester, complete all of the coursework and attain the competency that we associate with introduction.
Yeah, Walter, just back one slide. So the key here, and this is the hard thing, that you have to experience this to see it, and we'll soon have this set up so you can experience exactly what you see here. But you're not looking at a screen in this operation in 2 of the modalities that we're moving in. You're the person inside the pod. That's you. That's the avatar inside the pod. You are in the alien zoo, in your scientific instrument, moving forward as a scientist. And so you're now an enabled scientist.
You will be, whether at a Dreamscape lab or at your desk at your dorm room, in a mobile laboratory, fully outfitted with holographic versions of the very sorts of technologies that real biologists use in the field.
In fact, not just real, but actually functioning within all the realms of actual scientific theory and scientific practice.
Here you can see the world you're experiencing versus the world you're in. Your lab has a full complement of drones that allows you to extend your reach into this world. And using that, and it's very important to point out, if you see you and others, these will be educational experience for 6 and 8 people at a time, because we also believe collaborative learning is a valuable tool.
In fact, the collaborative learning is essential. And I'll say one other thing about the mobile drones, and that is, and Walter and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, there won't be anything that we're talking about here that's not technologically feasible. So ASU, for instance, has thought-controlled drones now that we're working on, and all kinds of other things, and we'll be linking people back to real technology so that they understand that this is not fantasy science fiction. This is real science fiction.
Michael, it's a really important point. So, for example, since our supposed planet, Illyria, would have a different sun with different color temperature, that will have an effect on the color and the depth of the foliage. The plant life there has a phylogenetic relationship with each other, and we're always sure that this is an illustration from a normal biology book, that everything we create in the alien zoo has a real world connection.
You might say, why do you have to go to Illyria, to a orbiting alien zoo? And it comes to this notion of the excitement of fantasy as a part of learning, and scientifically rigorous, but also empowering a part of your creative perspective that allows you to see things that you can't see when you're actually here on Earth.
Well, not only that, Michael, and Michael Angeletta, who's the head of the Biospine Department, a brilliant biologist at ASU, has been underscoring that college students don't have the opportunity to do actual research, to actually go in the field, to do collaborative research. And this allows them to do in this virtual world, which is a microcosm of the very biological issues they would otherwise face, but otherwise only face through written material. So, Michael, you talked about the emotional component. We have problems, but we try to put them inside of a story. So our very first proof of concept is based on the fundamental concept of the food web. But our problem we're solving is there is several litters of these creatures that are severely malnourished. And we have to go in with our partners and to do research to determine what's wrong. Is it toxins? Is it a depletion of nutrition? Is there an environmental issue going on? We even have digital means of interacting with our digital creatures. This is a very early animation, but this will allow our students to get the vital signs of the creatures they're trying to figure out what the problem is. And as Michael said, while that looks very space age, we base it on technologies that are already available. Here, this is a new device that takes blood without a syringe.
And we'll be taking students in their learning process back to this grounding in what we actually have here on Earth and what we've already developed and what we are developing, so that there's always this notion of this is doable, this is real, this is possible, and I'm now experiencing this in this fantasy world in a way that then helps to accelerate my learning.
That's absolutely right. So in this case, through understanding the complex relationship between these creatures in this ecosystem, we will understand what a food web is, which is really how energy is transferred between different parts of an ecosystem like this. And as Michael says, in that understanding, we will come to a sort of a first-person discovery of how those things work on Earth.
And so the key here is the learning of the concept, from which then all other learning becomes possible. So the thing that really is hugely represented here in the Dreamscape Learn environment is that we found a tool that enables what we call the universal learner to have the capacity to learn anything unencumbered by by what might be the limit of their particular learning environment, driven by the power of their imagination. This is the exciting thing about where this is.
Maybe I can jump in here for a second. So you're probably kicking up so many questions for so many people. Let's start. I want to kind of break it down into some categories. First, about the content and the classwork and the educational components. Obviously, this whole conference is about digital access, so technology enablement at scale and breaking down barriers for some people to access, not others. So I can ask two lines of questions, see how you guys think about this. One is on the content side. And again, Walter, you know, we've talked enough that I am more just the consumer of entertainment and I know the fun anecdotes. I don't know your industry well, but we always hear those stories about the actor who went and spent 6 months living in the situation that they were in. Are all of you in Hollywood going to go and take all your biology courses and your history courses and everything now? Are we going to see you? Are you going to bring up enrollment in all these educational institutions just so that you can be the creators?
Well, I think the real key is to be partnered with great educators. You know, when you introduce this very much as the sort of meeting of one set of capabilities in terms of storytelling and technology, and another set of capabilities in terms of pedagogy. And I really think that it's in the sort of explosiveness of that partnership that the content will come out. Also, this is our first title, and this is sort of a world in an analogous world in miniature. There will be a potential for medical or physiological studies where we can literally shrink students down and take them through the human body. There will be opportunities in the study of history to take people into those worlds or into a Jurassic world. It's an extraordinary range of things possible. I mean, one of the most exciting departments at ASU for me is deals with Earth and space exploration and the connections between those two things. It's a perfect mode of inquiry for Dreamscape Learn.
So I think Ellen, what I would add on that, is this notion of us being able to, because of this technological connection that we have, we've broken down the barrier that was insurmountable between Hollywood and academia. That is, we found a commonality of a tool that allows us to then cross back and forth into not just emotional experience that movies provide, but now emotionally driven learning. So you'll be able to, as Walter said, in our School of Earth and Space Exploration, maybe you'll go on one of our 20 plus missions that we're a part of.
So I'm glad you brought up the tech part, because that was my second question about scale. I mean, obviously, even the simple but really important question of access, right? Yes. And most of us think of VR as a wildly expensive niche opportunity to have, in the hands of a couple of people. Now, I will say, Michael, having watched what you did in response to the pandemic, making sure that every learner could get to the material that would help them learn during this last 6 months, 7 months, I'm sure you have thought about this, but maybe you can tell us how. How do you make sure that this doesn't just become something that the few folks who have a $1,000 VR headset can use?
Well, what people need to realize is that we're finding new ways to do things, and the new ways will be able to take some of the resources that we're spending on the old ways and then empower the new ways and get better outcomes over time. And so I don't see the technology as the rate limiter here. One, we're going to do this in 2D also, 3D, full immersive, as well as multi-avatar full immersive. So we're going to be able to move into any modality whatsoever. And I do remember eons ago when I was in graduate school, I paid $12,000 for an Apple II computer with a mapping system that I was using. And those Apple II computers don't cost $12,000 anymore. So there's economies of scale and things that are being driven here. I don't see economics as the rate constraint here. What I see is the rate constraint is the openness of faculty and parents to new ways of learning. That's going to be the rate constraint.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. Absolutely, this will be available in many different ways. We're at a time, because of COVID, there's a lot of emphasis put on the idea of remote education, remote training, remote retail, remote everything. Well, there's two sorts of remotes. There's a remote that takes the experience into someone's home, which is important. As Michael said, we're not going to let the adoption of VR headsets be a limiter for that. This will be available immediately as a 3D experience available on a 2D screen. I also sort of feel that, I remember back when Steve Jobs sort of realized that helping students get their hands on Apple computers created a generation of students who thought of those computers as what a computer is. I do think that we are not that far away where a mixed reality headset is going to be nearly as ubiquitous as any other smart device, whether it's a smartphone or an iPad. So, in fact, this might even drive the a more accessible access to the hardware, because everyone sort of sees this need. The idea of bringing this level of educational experience, this level of pedagogy, literally to anyone, particularly then with the addition of things like 5G and edge computing, this is really a way that you can bring a sort of educational experience to all over the world. And that's not only just to the individual user. As I said, we are anticipating the idea of the creation of virtual laboratories. So at your city, at your university, there might be a laboratory where you can go in and have the full avatar experience without getting on a plane, and at an institution which otherwise wouldn't necessarily have those assets.
Across a large number of learning environments, a large number of learning spaces, not just biology.
So maybe take this instance, like the biology class, but also the next, second, and third topic that you decide to take on. Give us a time frame. What are we talking about here? For when will this be out in the world and people will be utilizing it? And how long does it take to develop something like this?
Well, if you let Michael answer, he'll say next week.
Well, we're moving very quickly. In fact, Walter, you can put up the slide of what we're doing at ASU. So we're working on several levels. So there's software development and content development going on in Los Angeles. There's technology development going on in Los Angeles and in Phoenix. There's a huge new learning environment, a creativity thing that we're putting up. Walter will put the slide up. This is under construction now. We'll have the first module ready by early winter. We'll figure out how to accelerate module production. We'll go into full production mode after that across a range of subjects, a range of modules. We think there'll be high demand for all of this, new partners that will be coming in and so forth. This is the ultimate development of our exploratorium and all the things that we're building. We're building this right now in moving forward, the Dreamscape Learn. This is on the ASU campus. You can see in the upper.
Specifically, so this is the later phase. There will be 4 full-on Dreamscape pods, which will function as virtual laboratories initially for biology, but as we add curriculum for those other cases. So you'll have an immersive approach. I do want to point out something. These programs will be available as full curriculum or as sort of augmentations. We're not expecting every professor in the world to change the way they're teaching, but this provides a different sort of laboratory experience as part of the curriculum, or it's a full-on curriculum that provides the learning you need for introductory biology. At nighttime, these will offer up our entertainment titles. This is the second floor where we are building a Dreamscape Learn studio. This is very important. This is to allow other academics, other department heads, and scientists to see what we do and to collaborate, as well as students, and to teach students in this extraordinary new form of fully immersive VR. So, and already, as Michael says, it's quite integrated into the larger ASU ecosystem. As a key part of this sort of realm of learning, as he likes to call it. The Dreamscape Learn Studio will be up and functioning in February, right around the same time that our first module will be up for very intense testing. Everything is going to be tested for, educational outcomes, and we're very optimistic about that. And as Michael says, we will continue and hopefully finish this first course to be available at least at ASU in fall of 2021.
So Ellen, this is what Walter's saying there is really important, because it's actually at the end of the day, what we're looking for here is we're not just looking for a new way to teach things. We're looking for a way in which 80 to 90% of the learners master the subject. 80 to 90% of the learners have a whole new empowerment in their learning, whereas right now in math and science subjects across general populations, we're getting 50% mastery, 40% mastery. We need to get 80 to 90% mastery. So we think that we can drive up this gap that we have moving into the later stages of the mid-21st century here. We think that we can really facilitate learning, accelerate learning, expand learning, and overcome some of these gaps that everyone's talking about. And these will be the tools that will enable us to do this. And everything will be measured. Our success will be measured by the learning outcomes of the students themselves against traditional measures. That is, we're not fudging the measures of learning outcomes one bit.
Okay, and that's being built into even first version that's released. You've got the
the release is subject to that.
Got it.
And just to add one other thing to that, you know, my daughter's an educator, and so many of us have kids, and we've looked at the incredible challenges of remote learning. Even, and I won't say this about ASU because it's sort of the top of the pack, but there's a certain extent to which remote learning tends to be sort of like college, but not quite as good. I mean, there's great things that can be offered up, but I mean, whether it's a lecture online or whatever, all fantastic, all can work, but it is sort of a copy of something else. I think what we're trying to do at Dreamscape Learn is say, wow, can we take these digital tools, first-rate pedagogy, I mean, beyond first-rate, and an understanding of how you engage an audience and create a new way of teaching that isn't a carbon copy, isn't a lesser than version of something because it's remote, but actually has exemplary learning outcomes and is massively scalable.
In fact, the point there, Ellen, is that the old way hasn't gotten us to where we needed to be. We have all these kids not graduating from high school. We have half the people that graduate from high school are not STEM ready. They're not ready for 21st century high-speed technological change. We've got all kinds of stresses. We've got half the people that go to college in the United States don't graduate. You know, these are things that I've talked to the ASU GSV Summit about in the past. And so if we don't come up with new ways, we're just going to keep running the machine the way that we're running it. And then we're going to continue to be upset about the fact that we have these huge economic disparities. We're going to continue to be upset about the fact that we're still running at, 2%, 1.5% economic growth. We've got no steady competitive economic growth. All these things are a function of our upskilling learning, upskilling the process of learning. And we have to have these new technologies to do this. This is a breakthrough moment for us and for Dreamscape. It's a moment in the conversation that Walter and I had with Steven Spielberg. Spielberg talked about, one of his life's dream being how could he affect and impact learning outcomes? And that's what we're figuring out how to do. And so we at ASU, we have thousands of courses that we have put into digital learning format. We have hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people working on these things. And what we've seen is tremendous upskilling of the learning outcomes that are upskilling of the learning outcomes themselves. This will now take us into a whole new plane, a whole new way of thinking about things.
So before I move us to the next category, which is more of the business model of doing this, one last question there. So we've heard biology. I think I can infer from some of the comments you both made, the STEM fields are ripe for trying to communicate in new and different ways. Is there a pipeline? Can you tell me what other topical areas, like what's number 2, what's number 3, and do you have input from the outside world saying, hey, I'd like a course in American history, right? Or how are you going to work through what do you take on and when?
Well, I'm learning these terms new. There's an extraordinary man who works with ASU named Doug Becker, who is a educational entrepreneur who is behind Laureate University and Sylvan Learning Systems, and is doing a wonderful project with ASU now, which is a network of universities called Santana. And he described to me the idea of the trunk courses, which are like the kind of basic trunk courses that are, essential to a great number of learners in a university environment. I think that will probably be one of the criteria by which we look at this. But I'll also say, and it's important to know, while this is very much a partnership between ASU and Dreamscape, and ASU is the proving ground of it, this isn't just about ASU. This is also about creating a network of relationships with other universities. And there may, in fact, be opportunities for us to collaborate with other universities where there might be a course or a pedagogy or something that they particularly are strong in. So I think that, we've sort of looked at our next 3 or 4, but as we move into completing the testing on our first module, that will define in a lot of ways as this grows what the next 4 or 5 courses will be.
Yeah, so Ellen, one way to sort of look at this is go back and look at one of Walter's movies, Gladiator, where there was this unbelievable creation of the Roman Colosseum. And the Colosseum is right next to the Forum, and the Forum was the central location of the emergence of the Roman Republic. And all of the history and all of the structure and all of the learning. So you can teach history, you can teach social history, you can teach political history, you can teach philosophy, you can teach architecture, art history, all these things from certain kinds of settings that are now empowered by this. And 20 years ago plus, I was involved in some projects that were like 1/1000% of what these systems can do, because we could never be inside these things. And that's what this system allows for us. And so we see lots of opportunities in many, many subjects, hundreds of subjects, where this is going to be a powerful tool.
So say I'm sitting at another university right now, and I can affect change at that university, whether I'm the president or somebody else with more influence than the president. And I say, if this thing works, this is amazing. What do I do next? Do I approach Dreamscape Learn? Is it a faculty to faculty member going, hey, what are you guys doing over at ASU? We're going to try to do it here and recreate something. Like, Michael, how do you even think about that? I mean, look, you've been building intricate webs of collaboration with universities now for your entire tenure at ASU, and probably predating that. How do you do that? I mean, you are ASU on the one hand, and we've got Dreamscape here, and now we've got Dreamscape Learn. Work me through that business model that you're thinking about.
Well, just quickly, and then Walter can jump in here. So Dreamscape Learn is the joint effort between Dreamscape Immersive and ASU, and that would be the place that people would contact and reach out. We've got a slide at the end of the talk here. And so basically people would say, yeah, we want to be a part of this. And so what we'd be interested in is not chit chat so much. What we'd be interested in is getting curriculum up and running, and then there'd be the process and the mechanisms by which we would do that. So yes, we're open to that. There's already some preliminary discussions underway, and I think that a lot can be done in this arena, including the siting of facilities like the ones that we showed you earlier at ASU at other universities for this full immersive experience.
Okay, Walter, did you want to?
No, just that covers it very much. I was very fortunate just last week to have a conversation with the dean of a very important architecture school, and Michael's has had an impact on the world by sort of seeing the horizon 5 to 10 years before it's here. And my sense from my conversations I've had with other educators is that people can see this horizon. And we talk in our entertainment side that there's a grand irony, which is always part of a good story, which is that the very circumstances that are sort of putting a pause on our entertainment side just because of COVID, and we can't even open right here in Los Angeles, has created an urgency under this sort of thing, about this sort of thing. The idea of being able to provide remotely very rich educational or training or learning experiences almost anywhere, regardless of the state of a pandemic, regardless of economic inequalities, that people see this. And I do believe that there will be a rich relationship between us and other educational institutions, both as potential clients where they will adopt the idea of the virtual lab, but also as collaborating partners.
Got it. So let me ask a question, and I'm going to harken back to when I was a grad student and I had to teach a couple classes. And in the old world model, we'd have picked our textbook, and hopefully the person who wrote the textbook also wrote the study guide with the questions you might use on your tests, and then here's the answers that you can use. And I would just pull from that. Are you imagining this as a scenario where you start to create that, and all of a sudden I'm a biology professor and I take kind of the equivalent of the textbook and the study guide and the possible questions, and I pick and choose what I want, and it is that extensible? Or are these going to be do you have to have enough constraints just to even be able to develop it? And then the question that I've seen popped up here in the chat is, how expensive does that get, right? Like, this content creation is not the same as just writing a couple things down on a piece of paper that you're going to try to impart on somebody.
Well, when I was finding that slide for the biology textbook, I just happened by luck to see the cost of what biology textbooks are right now. I agree with Michael that I think that the consumer price is going to be something that will be manageable. There will be different versions of this, of different levels of immersion. I believe there will be support from companies and from foundations, so I'm not too concerned about that. In terms of content creation, it really has to do with the specificity of the course. History or art history or architecture actually is rather simple. Things get a little bit more complicated when you are animating creatures, but we've had an awful lot of experience doing this right now. And we are not seeing price either on the kind of content creation side or on the student consumer side as being a major gate.
I think what I would add to that, Ellen, is that as Walter has suggested, that the constraint's not going to be technology and it's not going to be cost, because this is an educational market, so we understand that there are going to be opportunities to expand entire degree programs. So we have 6,000 life science majors at ASU right now, 4,000 on campus, 2,000 online. With this kind of technology, the other assets that we have, the fully immersive capability of this, we could have, many, many times that number of life science majors or people taking life science classes, and so could others at other universities. And so I think there are financial opportunities here to make all of this work. I think the real issue here is going to be the resistance to technological innovation in the learning process, because everyone looks at every individual college or every individual course at the outcome of just your narrow, thin laser beam in a particular place. There's no looking at the social outcomes that we're faced with. We have a very unevenly educated society in a rapidly technologically evolving, in a rapidly complexifying society and economy that we live in. We have to find a way to scale education without having to build 20,000 more universities or colleges. We have to find a way to educate people quickly in really complicated things. And foundationally educate them, not trade school educate them only, foundationally educate them. If you understand food webs, you'll understand coronaviruses. If you understand biology, you'll understand ecosystems and environmental protection and all those kinds of things. You'll understand it. If you don't, then you won't understand these things. And so what we're talking about is a transformational logic that's got to be brought to the table.
Got it. Well, listen, I know we're getting close to the end here, and what I want to do is bring us back up to a high level for a minute, and let's just play it out a couple years from now. Tell me like your if only vision for what does this look like, and pick your time frame, 2 years, 5 years, whatever you want to say. What does this thing become? Like, I mean, obviously there's this core VR piece, there's the, can we make education entertaining, but like tell us your vision of what this is unleashing.
Well, I'll say from my perspective, I mean, this is a fundamental break point. This is an inflection point where we can now move into a new direction where all things related to learning can now be enhanced by this ability to emotionally engage the learner. And so that means then that this has the same kind of power as any technology that's come before it, period. This is, in fact, the first empowerment of computational engines to allow emotional engagement in a really serious way related to learning. So I see this as impacting the entire sector across all the things that we do in those areas where we need this kind of uplift. So I see this as an inflection point with a lot of upside in the next 5 years.
Yes, and when you asked that question, I just had just an image in my head. I produced the movie about Malala, and I learned a lot about girls' education through interacting with her. And I was just imagining a small village somewhere. It could be in Pakistan, or it could be in Egypt, it could be anywhere in the world. And a very, very smart high school student, a young woman who has great interest in what biology could be or another topic, but there isn't the academic resources there. But at this point, 5G technologies and edge computing is more ubiquitous, and the idea of getting a mixed reality headset into that young woman's hands and letting her experiencing something like this and be opened up to a level of sort of immersive educational experience that would be impossible, that the pure bricks and mortar of it makes impossible. I mean, when you ask that question,
I'm going to jump in because phenomenal. I hate to cut you off, but before we wrap, I want to make sure. Did you say we were going to put up a slide or something people can see? How do I follow up? I still don't know that the university person would know how to reach out. Or
I think there's a slide. There we go.
Inquiries on how to be a part of this vision. I guess the URL is Dreamscape. The email address is dreamscapelearn@asu.edu. Still a work in progress with a lot of underpinnings already in place and looking for the folks. Is that a good summary?
Absolutely.